Let's still use our microwave example over here. Let's consider two classes. One will be clients, the other one will be supplier. And as I present the code, I want you to think about which class should be considered as the clients and which one should be considered as a supplier. I will tell you the answer, but I will let you to think about as I go through the presentation. Okay, let's say we got a class called microwave over here, and we simply got two Boolean attributes, whether or not the microwave power is on and whether or not the microwave door is locked. And we got two mutator methods. Either we can turn on the power by calling power, which is going to be turned while on will be set true. And of course, you can also lock the door, in which case you can set the attribute lock to be true. Let's not worry about turning that off and also to unlock it, right? You can imagine there might be another two similar methods as well. But for illustration, let's only consider these two methods. And we also got another method here, which will be the heat method. And you're going to heat some objects. So I put the type object here just to make it general, because you never know what can be put into the microwave. So we really rely on the clients being disciplined, right? To really put something that can be heated. And so that's why we simply put some assumption over here to say the microwave should be turned on and also its door should be locked, right? As we said before. And the stuff that you want to heat should not be explosive, right? So that's one class over here. Right? Think about whether that should be a supplier or the client. Let's talk about the other class. We call that microwave user over here. And we simply got a main method just for console application. Okay. And we say that we're going to first of all declare some object n of type microwave. And then we just create a new microwave objects over here. And then let's get prepared about the stuff that we want to heat up. So we just say objects. So here on the right hand side, I simply say question mark over here. That means we don't really know what it is. Let's say it's up to the clients or up to this particular microwave user to really set it up, right? And we say before we try to heat up the stuff, the objects, we want to make sure we turn on the power and also lock it over here, right? And there is a minor typo over here. There should not be this closing square brackets over here. I'm going to fix it. Okay. And also we got m.heat, right? So you can see heat is actually a method over here that's declared in the microwave class over here. And the microwave is exactly the type for the context object n, as you can see over here, right? So everything is good. So now the question is, which class is the clients and which class is the supplier? And where exactly does that contractual relation happen? So these are the three questions over here. Client, supplier, and also where the contractual relation happened. So these are the three questions I have for you. You can now pause the video and think about it. Alrighty, so let's now talk about it, right? I got several points I would like to mention to you. It's already on the slides, but I would like to build from scratch very quickly about the different points so that you will hopefully can learn about the concept better. Okay. Again, we got these two clauses over here, right? This is where this particular service is actually used. So you can think about the service will be used in the context of the clients. So that means this clause over here is where the method call occurred. So that should be the client, right? That's number one. So think about this clause over here is the clients. Or we can say client class. What we're doing now is, remember the very first slide where we introduced to you the idea about client, supplier, and contract. Now we are adapting the notion of these three into the OOP, object-oriented programming, especially for method call. And also you can see this is where we declare the supplier, because in the context of microwave user, we actually somehow want to call this heat method to use the service. But to do that, we definitely have to declare the supplier objects. Otherwise, we cannot really invoke this method directly, right? Remember, in object-oriented programming, you always need a context objects. And we say that this one over here is the supplier class. Right, so hopefully it's rather simple up to now. And then we say that this part over here, right, over here, you can think about this is basically the supplier method or service. Supplier method or service used in the context of the client class. Right? It's really important for you to know which one is client, which one is supplier. And we also say that this is where some contractual relation occurred. Contractual relation in effects. And of course, at the runtime, when we execute this particular method, the contractual relation, the contract will be in effects. And we have to be careful about whether the contract might be violated, it might be broken. And it might be broken in one of the two different ways, right? Let's now talk about it very quickly. Okay, so here I want to talk about two very important notions, right? You want to think about right before the method call and right after the method call. So this will be right before the method call. Imagine that you're using the breakpoint in Eclipse over here. And let's say this is right before, right? And this point, you know what? Maybe let me just write it down. That might be easier. Okay, think about you here. You got m.heat, and then we got objects over here. So this is method call. You want to think about right before the method call, and also right after the method call. Right? If you actually put the breakpoint debugger, think about if you put a breakpoint over here, at the runtime it's gonna pause exactly here right before you execute this method, and then there might be another breakpoint over here in the next line. So when I move on to here, it's gonna be right after I execute this method, right? So these are the two timings I'm referring to. Okay, the first timing over here is so-called pre-states. Or you can think about what will be pre-execution of the method, of the supplier method. Right? And this one here, you can kind of guess symmetrically, it would be called the post states. Right? That's actually the post execution. The post execution of the supplier method. Right, so these are the two very important notion of states, right? Pre-states and also post-states over here. And why is it so important to really understand about pre-state and post-states? And what I want to say is over here, we'll see example. In the case of the pre-states, what you really want to know is, in the pre-states, it will be where the obligation of the clients must be fulfilled. Okay, so in the pre-state case, clients' obligation must be fulfilled. And let's simply just go back to the method call over here. You can see if you go back to the method call, you can see the clients was really trying to, let me just highlight it here. You can see these two lines over here right before the method call. What the client's class microwave user was trying to do is they try to prepare something over here to be heated, and also they try to turn on the power and also lock the microwave. So this is really their preparation to make sure the pre-states over here, right before they try to call the heat method, is ready for the supplier's method to really take their effects, right? So you can think about this part over here is really for the clients getting ready, the clients fulfilling obligation. And we know the obligation for the client will be to follow the instruction for the using the microwave, which will be preparing something that's not explosive, turn on the power, and also lock the door for the microwave, right? So these are the three preparation, the three ways for the client to fulfill the obligation, right? And let me say one more thing. It's also very important for you to know that we say that to really for the client to really fulfill the obligation, sometimes we say the obligation for the client also something called precondition. Okay, so precondition simply means before the method call, before using the supplier method, what kind of conditions should the clients establish in order to use the service, right? Conditions for clients to satisfy in order to use the service method. To use the supplier method. Right, so that's a precondition. You will actually see me mentioning about precondition very often. You can think about preconditions just like an input condition. That's one way to think about it. For every data structure operation that we talk about, some of them might just have some precondition. So you want to make sure, for example, if you want to remove something from the collection, you better make sure the precondition is the collection is not empty. Otherwise, how can you remove something from the empty collection? Right, precondition number one. Right, so that's about the pre-states. Let me now talk about the post-states over here. And the post-states is basically here. Right, you can see this is post-states over here. Right, let's now talk about why it is important. So this will be the supplier's obligation must be fulfilled at the post states. Right? You can see the supplier is really responsible for the post states, whereas the clients must be responsible for the pre states, right? But let me just go a little bit further. Let's go back to the code first of all. If you simply go back to the code, you can see this part over here is really the post states over here, right? This timing right after the execution for this particular method call. If we are able to reach this point without running into any exception, right? Typically, precondition will be encoded as exception, typically, okay? So the precondition over here, typically in Java, it would be exception, which you learn about in the earlier OOP course, right? If there was some precondition violation in the pre-states, meaning that the clients may not have either prepared something that's not explosive, or maybe they haven't really turned on the power, or maybe they haven't locked the door for the microwave. In that case, some exception would have been already occurred to really represent the precondition violation. That means we are not even able to complete this particular method call, right? Remember, if there's any exception occurring, that means the method will just terminate abnormally, not normally. So let's annotate this post states over here. So that's a post states, right? So you can think about given the clients fulfilling their obligation, because otherwise some exception would have already occurred and we cannot really reach the termination of the method, right? Given this, supplier must fulfill their obligation. And if you try to compare very quickly what I have written so far, you can see in the pre-states, the clients must fulfill their obligation. In the post-states over here, the supplier must fulfill their obligation, right? It's different timings. In the pre-states, it would be the client's responsibility. In the post-states, it would be the supplier's responsibility, right? All right, let me just do one more notes and then we can go back to the slides. Okay, so here I talk about the post states over here, right? So before I talk about the preconditions in the case where the this will be the conditions for the client to really fulfill, and symmetrically, something we call as the post condition. So the supplier's obligation over here, right, is something we call the post condition. In this case, the post condition for the microwave supplier would be you want to make sure the lunchbox or anything that's not explosive should be heated up properly, right? That'll be the post condition. So that'll be the conditions for. So that'll be the conditions for supplier to satisfy. given that the client actually followed the instruction. Okay. Let me recap very quickly before I move back to the slides. We talk about client class, we talk about supplier class, and we talk about client class over here. And we talk about the method call being interpreted as a contractual relation between the supplier and also the client, right? That's something you didn't really know before. Oh, let me just say one more thing, just to connect, just came to me. So the client class from your earlier OOP course, you may have just been referred to it as the callee. Caller. Caller is where you call the method. Supplier class is where the method is being called, right? That's callee. Right? But think about caller versus callee are notions that there are more at the implementation level. But when we talk about client versus a supplier, that's more at the design level. You should really know both, right? This course is not really about design. You definitely learn much more about design in the third year, but I'd like to give you a little bit of a relevant context over here about design, which you should also know, okay? And we also talk about whenever you have a method call over here, that's where the contractual relation will be in effects. And we talk about the notion between pre-states and also post-states, right? Pre-state versus post-states. And also the notion about precondition for the client to really satisfy before the method can be executed. And also the post-states, assuming that the client actually fulfilled the obligation, meaning that no exception has occurred during the method execution. That means upon the termination for the method, the service condition must be fulfilled by the supplier, right? That's so-called post-condition. We'll definitely see more example about precondition and post-condition later. Let me go back to the slides, and there's a few more bullet points I want to just draw your attention to. Right, so these are client versus supplier, and the same two classes right before the method call, right after the method call, right? And also contractual violation. Okay, so this one just reiterating about what might go wrong. It could be either the client's fault, in which case they simply either didn't turn on the microwave, or they simply didn't lock the door, or they simply gave something that's explosive, right? Each one of these will be the client's fault. But what can be the supplier's fault? Let's say the client followed all the instruction, but still, either we run into some other unknown exception, or maybe simply the objects over here, OBJ that we pass after this particular method call, if we try to check its states, but object is simply not heated, for example, in that case, it would be the microwave's, the supplier's fault. Alrighty, so that's about the notions of client-supplier contracts I would like you to learn, and make sure you understand all the concept over here and also the microwave example. If I give you other two classes of client-supplier, you should just be able to apply the same notions. Let's now move on to the idea about modularity.